All right. I'd like to welcome everyone to our first Monero Fireside Chat. My name is Ricardo. You might know me as Fluffy Pony. And obviously, what we really wanted to do is start something that we could do quite regularly, maybe every few weeks. Let's just see. No one can see us. That's great. Aha. Now people are starting to see us. Okay, great. So we carry on. And what we really wanted to do was start something that we could do regularly, maybe every couple of weeks, talk a little bit about what's been happening on the development side of Monero more than anything else. And specifically, we wanted to engage with contributors and other developers and talk about some of the technical stuff that we've been doing. Obviously, we sort of like let the cat out of the bag a little bit by saying that we have a big announcement, and there have been a lot of interesting ideas as to what the announcement is going to be. We've had people say, oh, I2P integration is done. That's what they're going to announce. The embedded database is done, which would be miraculous, but unfortunately not yet. But what we wanted to show, and we've got a little video clip that you guys can take a look at afterwards to see what went into this. But we wanted to talk a little bit about Monero usability, because as you know, Monero is primarily text-based at this stage. And it's exceedingly difficult for new users to come on board and to use something when there's such a large barrier to entry. So on the 21st of May, like quite back in the day, we formed a working group, and that working group's role was to focus on Monero usability. And obviously there was a lot of discussion about what we would do from a next stage perspective. There are these core fundamental issues, these things that we need to solve, like the embedded database, like the quality of service so that it doesn't tank your internet connection. There are lots of things that we need to do from that perspective, but from a usability perspective, we need to know what do we do once we've done those. How can we make Monero accessible and simple to use? So we formed this working group, and obviously, as you guys may or may not know, we're very pragmatic, or at least I am. Before we start writing code, we think about what we're going to do. We discuss, we plan, we engage and get other people involved who are domain experts in that field. So what it really started with, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute or in a second, really. What it really started with was an idea and a concept and a lot of research. An idea and a concept and a lot of research to wireframing. And at this stage, if you don't realize that I'm talking about a Monero GUI, I'll show you what wireframes are. So this is really what we started with, and I mean this was the culmination actually, because what we started with was not this. We started with something that looked a lot like Bitcoin, and we realized we wanted to give power users an experience. And you start with designing the things that power users need, and you sort of start figuring things out with these very, let's call them relatively ugly wireframes. And as things continue, you start to figure out really what it is that you want, and you start to fine-tune everything. And from that, through that process, when you start engaging with people and you start saying, hey, what do you think about this? And when I say people, I don't mean technical people. I mean completely non-technical, have no idea what Monero is, aren't really interested in cryptocurrency. You start getting a feel for what works for people and what doesn't. So this was the beginning of things, the wireframes. And it obviously had a lot of work and had a lot of thought put into it. And you'll see that in the little video clip, which we'll put up afterwards. And thereafter, we went from that into designing components. And when I say we, it's not me. There are people who are a lot better at this than I am. I have completely terrible Photoshop skills. So yeah, the next stage was really designing components. And you know, when you're designing components, again, there's a lot of thought and a lot of effort that goes into it. And I cannot begin to tell you the amount of time that we spent playing around with the design of small things. You know, what about this, and what about, you know, what color palette should we use, and the fights between designers about color palette choice, and you know, is this calendar better than that calendar? What, you know, what's it going to look like on certain backgrounds? What's accessibility going to be like? You know, what sliders do we use? And all of these were designed from scratch to create an interface. And obviously, you know, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, to use an English phrase. So after all of this, after all of the endless time that we spent, after all of the back and forward, we're at a stage where it's still early, there's still a lot of work to be done, and we're not making any promises that you're going to see a GUI next week, so please don't get on Bitcoin Talk or on Reddit or in RSC and say, hey guys, when's the GUI coming? It's not going to be that quickly. But what we really wanted to show is what we've spent a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort doing, and it's all been donations. There's been no pre-sale, there's been no crowd sale, there's been no IPO, there's been no pre-mine, there's been no insta-mine. All of this is completely 110% supported. And I wanted to show you what we've been doing since then and what we've accomplished. So I'm going to just switch over to this. Let me just move this over. Yeah. All right. So for you, those of you that aren't familiar, this is Qt Creator and or Qt Creator, depending on what you prefer. And this is a system that is used to build and work with user interfaces in a cross-platform and extremely extensible way. The disadvantage to using Qt is that you have, or Qt is that you have a lot of fundamental work that you need to do, because you've got to support so many different operating systems and you've got to support so many different environments. And you know, if you want to have a good-looking UI that does not look like everything else, there's a lot of work. So this is where we're at, and this is obviously completely 110% live, no pre-anything. As you can see, there's no wizard yet, there's no first start wizard, there's none of that, but this is the Monero user interface. Let's call it first draft, but it's not really first draft. We've been working on it for some time. I'm just going to maximize it so you don't see anything else in the background. Okay. And basically the way we've designed it is we've designed it initially to appeal to power users, because power users are a core part of our audience, and they are going to be our early adopters. So if you take a look here, you can see that there's an area over here which you can scroll, and this would be your history. Obviously the data in here is not actual data, but there's a lot of little things, like, you know, if you have an entry in your address book and the name of the entry is really long, what happens? It gets collapsed over here, but if you move your mouse over it, then you're able to reveal it. Okay. We have a little pop-out window over here where you can copy the address to clipboard, where you can add an entry to your address book straight from this dashboard, where you can send funds again to the same destination, and where you can find similar transactions, so transactions that were sent to that destination before in your entire history. You can search your history from this dashboard. You can search by name, description, address, whatever it is. You can do a quick transfer, which will use a set of default values, for the mix-in level and so on. And all of this is at a very sort of basic level, or very sort of hands-on level for a power user. You can see your network status. Am I connected? Am I not connected? One of the other things that's quite nice is this bar here on the side where you can see the Monero Twitter, and where we'll add functionality to that as things progress. That bar can be hidden because it can be kind of annoying if you don't really want it there. The whole interface is designed in such a way that it can be resized, so to a certain minimum, so that you can work with things as you want to, because you guys are power users, and we expect that you're going to want and demand features out of this. If you want to transfer, you have the transfer window, and one of the cool things is the privacy level, which defaults to a certain value, but obviously you can raise it all the way up to a very high privacy level. And this is obviously still in the user interface side. As things progress, as we build on this, we are going to decide what is a low privacy level, how many mix-ins is a low privacy level, how many mix-ins is a high privacy level, what are the two extremes. You can choose your transaction priority, which would of course affect your transaction fee. You can type in an address or select it straight from the address book. You can put your payment ID in there, when we know payment IDs are pretty much the bugbear of anyone's existence who uses Monero right now. You can put in an optional description, which then gets saved to the local address book once you send your transaction. From your history, again, we wanted to appeal to power users, and we realized that one of the biggest problems that power users face is they want to see their history. They want to see what transactions they've done. They also just don't want to see a static list of transactions. They might be searching for something specific. And as Monero becomes more used and more useful, we expect that people are going to want to dig into their history and say, oh, 8 months ago, I sent an amount of 5.3 Monero to this person. I can't remember who he is. I can't remember what his address is. I don't know how to prove that I sent that transaction. So being able to filter your transaction history is very important. It's important to us, and we wanted to make something that you guys would find useful. Obviously, you can do basic filtering by address, by payment ID, by the description, which is the entry in the local address book. You can set the from date and the to date to filter transactions. Advanced filtering allows you to filter, by the transaction type, or to set the amount from and the amount to. And all of this, will give you then a much shorter list, presumably, to work from. You'll also be able to use the columns at the top to change the ordering and to change the sort. And this is by no means a fully fledged accounting application, which is something that can come later in a completely different application. But for companies that need to have control over their Monero account and need to be able to find specific things, this sort of tooling is invaluable. Again, from the interface, you're able to immediately do things like copy the address, add it to the address book, reuse that destination, and so on. And then finally, the address book. Also, we wanted to make this really easy to use. We wanted to allow you to be able to browse through things, find a specific address, find a specific payment ID, whatever it is, and then give it a description. So if you transfer a lot to, let's say, Poloniex because you're a miner, and on the 5th of the month you've got Amazon bills to pay, and so you need to dump your mined coins to pay your bills, then you'll be able to put an entry in here with your payment ID, and it'll make your payments a lot faster, a lot snappier. Obviously, this is fundamentally fundamental stuff for power users. This is stuff that we need. But we're also aware that we have users that are not power users. And so we wanted to create, at the same time, within this interface, the ability for those new users to work with things. And what I'd like to show you next is the mini window. So this is the mini window, and it's one button that you click, and it wraps down into this. And again, very simple. You've got your amount, you've got your destination, you've got your payment ID, you've got your balance. You can set your privacy level, and you're able to see your connection to the network, and that's kind of it. It's not any more complex than that. And that's about it. I mean, there's still a lot of work to do. We're at the moment busy working on the first start wizard, which is really a key aspect to it, or to using Monero. Whoopsie daisy. Let's just turn that off. And we're quite happy with and proud of where we've come in the past little while. There is still a great deal of fundamental work that needs to get done. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen in a short space of time. But of course, like with everything that Monero does, or that we do with Monero, it is going to be open source. It's going to be up on GitHub. You guys are going to be able to submit pull requests if there are things that you think should be done differently, if there are tweaks that you build and create. And also, quite importantly, is we understand fundamentally that there is a need for people to be able to use the interface in their home language, in the language of their choice, not in languages that we think are important. And so there will be a need for translation. And we're going to be using Transifex for that, and we'll have all of that set up so that when you guys are ready to help us, the tooling is there. So that's sort of a brief overview. And if there are questions, please catch me on RC or catch us on RC. Chat to us on Bitcoin Talk. We are going to post this. Oh, obviously this video will be available afterwards, so you guys can take a look around and play around with it. So that's the big announcement. Now, you've heard from me, and what I wanted to do next is I wanted to introduce two of the contributors, two of the key contributors on Monero, and they're going to introduce themselves one at a time, starting with Tom. And there we go. Tom, take it away.
Okay, I'm Tom. I'm Tom. I hear myself. I don't know if I'm supposed to. Anyway, so I haven't used this Hangout too much. So I studied computer engineering at Purdue University here in Indiana in the U.S. And now I'm working on this. I don't know if you want more background, or am I going straight into the code?
No. Well, next up is Zach, who's got to introduce himself too.
Hey, I'm Zach. I am a contributor as well. I've been working on the Windows side of things. Louder? Can you hear me?
That's perfect.
Yeah, I've been mostly working on the Windows side of things, MinGW and the daemon, or daemon. So that's good.
Cool. Okay, so Tom and Zach are joining us today, and they're going to be talking a little bit from a development perspective about some of the core things that we've been doing, some of the underlying things that we've been doing, and obviously this has a lot of relevance to developers and contributors that are going to be picking this up and working in code that they've written afterwards. So we felt it was important for us to convey a sense of what we were doing from a development, a technical perspective. This is going to get quite technical, so if it's, if you're not very technically inclined, and if you don't want to hear a whole bunch of development buzzwords that don't make sense, you're more than welcome to leave the Hangout now, and we'll catch up with you later. Otherwise, for those that are still stuck around, Zach, it's on to you.
Okay. I'm just going to warn you, my battery, my power supply, for some reason is not working at all, so I'll let you know if it's about to die, and somebody's just going to have to jump in. Great time for that to happen. So I want to sort of try to quickly take you through some of the stuff that's going on Windows, and maybe talk a little bit about what's also going on the, as far as the daemon on the POSIX side of things. Let me share this. One moment. Okay. Looks like that's working. One second. Okay. Can you guys see that? All right.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. So, great. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is our build system. So the existing build process on Windows is kind of haphazard. You know, you go out, you install CMake, you might install Git to clone the repository, and then we have a Visual Studio-based build that works now for people. But Visual Studio is kind of lagging a little bit behind in standard support. So I started exploring the possibility of alternatives and started looking into the MinGW compiler, which is a variant of the GCC compiler, if you're familiar with that from Linux or OS X or whatever. So there are several projects within MinGW. The first being MinGW itself. So this can get a little bit confusing if you're new to Windows. And before I started on this, I hadn't used Windows in a really, really long time, like almost 10 years for more than like 5 minutes. So there are like 3 or 4 similarly named projects. There's MinGW, there's MSys, there's MGW-W64, and then there's MSys2, which I'm going to get to at the end. So MinGW W64 is what I ended up settling on. It's a fork of the original MinGW. The original MinGW is more focused on supporting a POSIX environment so that you can have like a shell, a POSIX shell on Windows and work with that. So MinGW W64 forked off from their compiler, which is a really old version of GCC, and they have done a lot of work to support the latest GCC versions, even the latest MinGW, the latest build of theirs is the latest GCC as far as I know. So that's fantastic. They're supporting. They've done a lot of work to make POSIX threads work on Windows, and the new C++11 thread features, which is fantastic. So then there's, beyond that, there is the MSys2 environment, which is a new sort of bundling of both MSys and MinGW-W64 together into a really nice package. And for me, really the best thing about this is it comes with a really mature package manager from the Arch Linux project, which I know Tom and I are both fans of and users of. And that's going to make things, I think, a lot easier for us to produce builds and bring in dependencies for you guys when you're working on, you know, if you want to do a build yourself, it's going to be a lot easier for you to say, bring in Git, bring in CMake. If we start moving away or, you know, using other libraries in addition to Boost, this makes it a lot easier for us. I can show you quickly. So the name of the package manager is Pacman. This is the MSys2 environment here. So you know, this just gives you an idea of what's available. lots of packages. So we have a lot of options here, and they all come in, if you saw maybe, so let's look for something specific. So there's the Ninja build system, and you can see that there are i686 and x86-64 variants. So this whole system, if you look at the root of the file system, there's an MinGW32 folder and an MinGW64 folder, and those each host full environments for 32-bit and 64-bit respectively. So I can install my libraries using the package manager, and that's where they'll go. Another really, so I can show you really quick, like, so that's oh, sorry. So you can see that's it. It's installed. We get signed packages. So the packages are both signed and checksummed, so you know you're actually getting what you want. And then let's see here. If we look here, I've cloned. There's a Git repository for all these packages. They're all available here. I can let's see. Move into the MinGW64. I mean the Ninja build directory. I can look into this build script here, and this is environment is slow. All right. Well, you can imagine I can customize this the package build files here. So if we need to do customized package builds, we can do our clone this repository or have our own repository for people to pull from, or even in the future we could have a repository of our own that hosts binaries. So that's just sort of an overview of MSys itself. I find it, I like it a lot, but maybe that's just because I'm coming from the Arch Linux side of things. So we move into our build directory here. So here I have a clone of the Monero project. I'm just going to show you a few things that are different if you want to play around with this. If you look in MSys2 directory, you'll see that I've added a 32-bit and 64-bit toolchain. And those have all the stuff we need to build on, on this system. Okay, so if I move into the build directory here, so this is the command that you would use right now. In the future, it would be nice to have a package build script to interact with the package manager that will pull in dependencies for us, so that it turns into essentially you clone our repository, run the package build, and things get built and you're done. But we want the MSys makefiles generator. Fun stuff. And then this is important, the toolchain file. So MSys2 /64-bit. And if I'm lucky, that will run. Just seems to be a little lag since I'm running this in a VM, so. Okay, it found the compiler and everything okay, and the boost libraries, which I installed through Pacman. So it's all ready for a build. I can, go ahead and build the daemon if I want. And this is already built. There should be So I'm just going to kill that. But that's the general idea with the MSys2 environment. So if we have time, I'm going to go ahead and move on to showing you a couple of things with the daemon. Okay. Didn't seem to die there. Okay. So I have some executables here that I've built using MinGW. This is just the regular Windows console. Now, if we take, you'll be familiar with the Monero D executable, of course. So I can go ahead and run that, and this you should be familiar with this output. The difference here is that the interactive mode is gone. So if I type, nothing's going to happen. We've removed that. We weren't particularly happy with it. I mean, this is supposed to be a daemon anyway, and by definition, at least for me, a daemon is something that runs detached in the background. So this isn't really even technically a daemon running like this. So what we've done is create some RPC controls for this so that I can communicate with it. So I can move to this other console and run the stop daemon command. This is an RPC command. We'll see how it goes since this is going a lot slower than it has been since I have so much going on. It should get that signal. It's storing the blockchain. Oh, it's probably going to run into some errors. I meant to. There's some permissions errors here that I'm about to fix shortly, but it's something small. So so what's better is, at least in the POSIX world, we have things that can fork and move into the background. So I'm going to show you what the help looks like for this now. You can see there are some additional arguments here: install service, uninstall service, start service, stop service. So these are all the new Windows service support. This is
I have a question.
Yeah.
With the Windows service support, what happens if you started without any of those hooks? Does it just start in interactive mode?
It starts in interactive mode. That's correct. Or not interactive. That's correct. It starts in this mode where you can see the log output. That's the error I was talking about, but it's just a permission thing. Yeah.
Okay, but so you have to explicitly send it. You have to explicitly get it to bind to the service if you want it to work like that.
Yes. So the thinking here for having these individual commands. So I could just have a detach command, like we do on POSIX. The reason for this is to give you more fine-grained control. So let me bring up the task manager. So from the task manager, if you go to the services tab, you get and click this services button on the lower right, you get a service manager if it'll launch. Okay. So what this does is allow us to. So here's the difference between the four commands. So these are based completely around the way Windows works with services. So basically, you install a command line that Windows saves in its service manager, and then you can start it, and it will launch that command line. Stop it, it stops it, and uninstall will remove it from this service manager. And then, excuse me. So basically what this does is give you the option of adding the service to the service manager and then controlling it from the service manager if that's what you'd like to do. Or the commands work perfectly fine from the command line. So that's the sort of the reasoning behind that. It also interacting with a service manager requires root permissions. So originally I tried out doing this as and granting administrator privileges to this executable in general. But that could get annoying if you just want to send a command, like an RPC command to the service, or if you want to run it interactively, or something that doesn't explicitly need that stuff. So if I run the install service, you'll see it asks for administrator privileges, and I grant those, and it gives me a success message there. So it's actually, Windows likes to launch things as command lines and completely separate processes, as opposed to like a fork on Unix that would copy the memory. So okay, if I refresh this,
I have a question on
that go ahead.
topic, or on the topic of Windows. So when you install, I mean, hypothetically, if a Windows user, and obviously the Windows service aspect is more for environments where there's automation, if they have two copies of the daemon in, let's say different folders, and they call add service more than once, is that going to then build two services, or is it going to lock it into a single service so that there's only ever one service running?
It should fail here. So I'll run it again. Hopefully it'll fail. See what happens. Yeah, it gave me an error. I've been doing my best to make those messages stick around, but so far the errors seem to be dying out. It's kind of weird since it launches a whole nother window if you use admin.
Okay, it's just more from the perspective of it of not ending up with like 3,000 Monero services at the same time when the server restarts.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. I haven't played around. No, it shouldn't happen because it has a unique name. So the wallet, the RPC wallet, also does this. I'm about to get to that if we get a chance. And that can have multiple services. So here, let me go ahead and so there's our help for the RPC wallet. And I need to
Zach. Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Your video feed was gone, and now it's back for me.
Oh, okay. Thanks. So let's see. That's not what I want. So this is the new user program default data directory for permissions reasons, I think. All right, let's see if this just works with. I don't want to hold this up with a relative. And oh, sorry, and install service. So that installed, and if I refresh here, we have it here, and you can see this is named with, and it has its address appended to the name so that we can have more than one. So, I could go ahead and install second service. Installed, and refresh. Now we have two. Now these have not started yet. They're just sitting there waiting to start. So I'll start this one. And it might take a second. I should have a log open here somewhere. You can see it's running. And if I refresh here, it started. I'm going to try to, I might have messed up. We'll see if the relative path name works for this. It's not as plug and play and nice as it could be. There are a few things that are still a little rough around the edges that I may be leaving out. But it is possible to get it working. So let's see if it times out. I might mention here too that if you're going to stop a service, you can stop it from the manager, and it's going to try to save your blockchain or interrupt it in interactive mode, and it'll try to save the blockchain. But Windows tries to be helpful. Yeah. I don't want to waste too much time here, but you'll just have to trust me that those do actually work. Or how are we on time? Let's see here. This is permissions thing. C:\. Let's
You gotta love the way Windows handles this.
Yeah, I know. I didn't like editing my command line. This is just the path to the wallet. Okay. All right. Here's what I'll do. You can tell this is not my native. Okay. That's going to fail, but I have this command line here because that service is already installed. All right, let's just say no. All right. So let's uninstall it. All right, it does this. Okay, great. It's just lagging. Okay, so that uninstalled. And we'll reinstall it. My computer's about to melt. Okay. And I think that worked. Service installed. Okay. So let's see if we can interact with that. I have a command ready here. And oh, we have to start it. You can see it's not quite as simple as this is just the way it works on Windows. But you can see that this could be useful for automating things.
Yeah, the Windows service thing seems very analogous to like systemd or whatever on a Linux box. The lack of backgrounding things otherwise is a bit annoying, like having to use a Windows service. But it seems analogous to things people are already familiar with.
Yeah, and I think the bottom line is the environment that we needed to create, or that we are creating, is there are going to be more automation tools, and there are going to be people that are reliant on stuff like this, and you can't really expect people to have open terminal windows or open command prompts and use screen to run a service that really needs to background properly. So that was really the thinking and where this started, and what we're ending up with is a much stronger tool set for environment automation.
And you can see here this actually did succeed. It does run. I'm not going to play around with getting the other one to work, but just trust me that I could make the other wallet work independently and get a different key here.
So how much money is in that wallet? I mean, if anyone had to try and recover the wallet with that key,
Tons and tons.
Great.
Zero. Yeah. There's nothing in there. But yeah, so that's a general idea. There's a ton of this adds a ton of additional complexity essentially to the daemon beyond what there would be on just Unix, because with fork it's easy. With this, Windows wants to own the entire process lifecycle. So, I built a little internal tool that allows us to do that with our processes and add all this functionality with minimal, it's reusable. So I can't say it's perfect, but
and basically
that's the general gist.
The idea is, the idea will continue to be that the daemon is the thing that connects you to the network, and typically on an environment, and barring extreme edge cases, you'll only have one connection to the network. Otherwise, you are oversaturating your line and oversaturating your connection to the network for no good reason. But you can have multiple RPC wallets, and those can all have different Windows services and whatnot. So in an environment where you do need, let's say, 5 wallets running simultaneously for whatever reason, maybe a corporate environment where you are separating accounts into different wallets, then that's all there, and you've got that set up, and you've got multiple services that make sure that those wallets are available, or those accounts are available on reboot or on first start or whatever. And there's the single service that its sole job is to maintain your connection to the network.
Yes. I can go further with this, but I think that's the general idea. This is lagging so badly in my battery dying. So
okay, that's fine. We're gonna hand over to Tom. Before we hand over to Tom, I'm just gonna hand over back to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Zach, thanks very much for that. So one of the things that we've been discussing, and it's obviously gone through a lot of discussion. It's stuff that was originally raised by KBM. Thank you, KBM, for bringing it to our attention. It went through a lot of discussion. It went through a lot of feedback, and where it really came to a head was we had a focus group, or test group rather, that sat down and played with the interface. So the interface that we showed you earlier, we had a group of randoms. They came in, they played around with the interface, and we wanted to sort of get a bit of feedback. Obviously, the mini window was the thing that we wanted them to play with most, but fundamentally, we wanted to get a feel for the power user thing. Thrown into that interface, how confusing is it? And we ran them through a working wireframe of the wizard. And we realized that the wizard, even in its current state, as easy as we have tried to make it, the wizard is confusing. People see this thing that says, do you want to create a new wallet, or restore a wallet, or open a wallet? And they go, what's a wallet? I've got a wallet in my pocket, and there's a great deal of confusion over this term, and we don't see it because we're involved with cryptocurrency, because we're cryptocurrency enthusiasts. So to us, wallets is easy. I've got a Bitcoin wallet, I've got a whatever all the other altcoins are, I've got a Monero wallet, no problem. But it is a confusing term. It's a fundamentally bad term. Especially when you take a look at environments outside. I'm just going to tilt this down a little bit. When you take a look at environments outside of the United States, in Europe, in South Africa, in Australia, and a lot of places like that, the term wallet has a masculine feel to it, or it is sometimes even a masculine word. And in South Africa, for example, if you are a female, then you keep your money in a purse. If you are a male, you keep your money in a wallet. And so there's this disconnect, and it's the same for other countries. Whereas in the States, a purse is a handbag. So now you start playing around with terms and with how do we make this accessible to new users who are seeing this for the first time. And we've got an open GitHub issue where there's been a lot of discussion, and there's been a lot of discussion on RSC about this. But what we want to do is make a shift from the term wallet to the term account. Because account, maybe account has got the idea of centralization, which may be bizarre in a decentralized application. But to cryptocurrency enthusiasts, we know that an account is just a synonym. It's just a name. We know that when we create a wallet, if that's called create an account, what difference does it make? We still know what it means. However, to a new user who's coming to this for the first time, who is familiar with PayPal, with Facebook, with Twitter, with their bank, now they come to this and they open it up for the first time and it says create new wallet, confusing. If it says create new account, or restore an account, or open an account that's on disk, they go, I understand what I want to do. I want to fundamentally grasp this. I want to create an account. And that's what we wanted to achieve, is the separation between what is confusing and difficult and what is palatable and easy to understand and intuitive to the end user. So you are going to see over the next little while, over the next 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to start phasing out the term wallet. It's going to be used colloquially, just like people still use MRO for Monero instead of XMR. That's fine. Term that we're adopting moving forward is going to be account, and we're going to rename binaries so that simple wallet will become simple account, RPC wallet will become RPC account, and so it will go. And as the terminology changes, it might be, people might be a little bit abrasive initially. It doesn't imply any sort of centralization. Everything is still normal and carries on. But to new users, it's going to make things a lot easier. Now, on that note, I'm going to hand over to Tom, who's going to tell us about what he's been doing, which has been exceedingly challenging.
Okay, so first I'm going to turn my speakers down so I don't hear me come back quite as bad. I can't promise anything about the audio quality. I'm in between. I just moved into a new apartment. I don't have the internet set up, so I'm in a cafe. So what I've been working on is trying to update the blockchain to not be well, for lack of a better way to put it, to just not be poorly done, to not be stupid, I would say. So there are some deficiencies with it that I seek to resolve, that we need to resolve. Like, for example, the entire blockchain is in RAM at all times. That's untenable, right? I mean, the blockchain is already several gigs, and soon all but the most powerful boxes won't even be able to run the daemon at all, let alone comfortably. So we need to move that into some sort of a database-based storage method. And while I'm doing that, it seems like a good and convenient time to go through and do a lot of refactoring in the blockchain as well. I mean, it works. The blockchain as is works, but there are a lot of things that it does that are either inefficient or just outright unclear to the naked eye when you're looking at the code, and just there's things like that. So I'm going through and doing cleanup, and there's lots of literally uncalled code. There are functions in the blockchain that never get called. I mean, they just exist, and there's lots of interdependency as well. Lots of functions that depend on other functions. Not quite. I mean, you can't quite do it, back and forth. But it depends on other classes, which also depend on it, and that is bad, I think, for separation of concerns and for modularization. It makes changing things in the future very difficult. So I'm trying to move away from classes depending on one another, if possible, as well. So so I guess that's the end goal. There's not a whole lot. I just tried to lean to look behind a window on my monitor. I tried to lean to look around a window on my monitor. I think I might be losing it. So so that's the general idea of what I'm trying to accomplish. It's I it's on the one hand it's a difficult enough task because I have to have a rather decent working understanding of all the blockchain things, right? I have to be able to sit here and understand every part of it because again I'm going through and refactoring, so I can't refactor something away that's needed or accidentally change functionality because that would break everything. And on the other hand, I also need to figure out currently the way the blockchain is stored is it's just a bunch of elements in a class, like an array of blocks, and then an array of transactions sitting outside those blocks as a duplicate, and then unspent outputs and spent keys, and it stores several things from the blockchain in several places. And the worst offender here is that it stores every block, and it also stores every transaction outside of those blocks. And those familiar with the blockchain system will note that a block is 95+% transaction. It's like 99% transactions. So that's essentially doubling the size of the blockchain. And again, it's still all in RAM, so that's terrible. So I'm trying to see do we need that for speed? Do we need them stored outside of the blocks, the transactions that is,
Yeah.
or can we move away from that?
There's been a very, I would say, an early discussion, and it's something that's happened as our understanding of the blockchain has grown. We've realized that because obviously this is not a Bitcoin blockchain. It's something that's slightly different and something that needs a different approach. But fundamentally, there are three sets of data that we've realized need to be stored. You've got the actual blocks, you've got the unspent transaction outputs, which is the UTXO set, and you have the key image set. Now, those three are important. You've got the key image set, which needs to be checked for every new transaction that is received during a broadcast, or when a block is received to verify the transactions in that block, or when you create a transaction yourself. Those key images are used to confirm that you are not trying to perform a double spend. You're not trying to create use a output or use an input that has been used previously. So that's the key image set. Then you've got the UTXO set, and the UTXO set is, of course, fundamental to Monero because all of the unspent outputs that are part of this UTXO set form basically a really big table of values. And for every single output, yeah.
So for every single provably spent.
Yeah, and if it's in a ring signature, if it's part of a ring signature, it's impossible to prove that it's spent. And so basically, what happens is that UTXO set grows and grows, and the only time a transaction or an output rather falls out of that UTXO set is when it's spent with no mix-in. And we're moving to a point where no mix-ins are not really going to be the done thing, and eventually are not going to be allowed. But basically, your UTXO set is going to grow, and that's that second data set. And then obviously the third data set is the blocks itself. Now, as Tom pointed out previously, there was this approach, and this is the code we inherited from CryptoNote, the reference code. The approach was, oh hey, let's just have duplicate sets of data. Let's have the blockchain, and let's have all the transactions, and let's have the UTXO set, and let's have the key images. Now, if you come from a relational database environment, that's just a fundamentally broken way of doing things. So one of the things that we've been playing around with, to try and get some idea of how we can store things is what if we did it in a normalized fashion? Because right now, the way it's stored, even within the flat file, is very denormalized. And those are terms that are normally applied to relational databases, which is, kind of the sort of idea, that what we could have is we could have the blockchain, but then instead of storing a key image in a denormalized state in the blockchain and thus having a duplicate, you have a pointer in the key image set, and that, or in the blockchain data set, and that pointer then points to a separate data set of key images, and you're able to then go and look it up. And the same with UTXOs, so that we are in a manner that is as efficient as possible. We are still able to recreate individual blocks that verify in their raw state, but we are not storing the data on disk in a manner that is inefficient. So obviously this is very rough, very loose, very sort of early stages, but the idea is let's normalize the data, and if we have an incredibly fast key value store, and these are 3 key values storehouses, for want of a better term, within that data set, or within the embedded database, we're fine.
Okay, so in order to facilitate using such a database, and more importantly to me at least, and I think going forward, more importantly to the project, facilitate storing the blockchain however the hell you want to do, whether that be you could store it as a flat file, I don't care. You could store it as a database. You can store it in, you can keep the entire thing in RAM and have the whole thing be an in-memory thing the entire time. So in order to move to a way where we can do that, what I've done is I've created an abstract interface for so the current implementation of the blockchain is one class, and it's called blockchain storage. And I find that hilarious because it is an incredible misnomer in that it is the blockchain storage, true, but it's also the blockchain logic. And I think coupling those together is incredibly bad, right? Because it means that if we change out the storage, the logic has to be rebuilt, and we can't quickly change out the storage, and so on. They are incredibly tightly coupled, and so I've actually separated that out. The blockchain logic will now just be a class called blockchain, and then the blockchain storage will be an instance, will be a concrete instance of an abstract interface called blockchain DB. And let me just turn on this screen share thing and see if it actually works, and share this terminal. So I believe this should be sharing my terminal. So I've gone ahead and I've mocked up this interface, and I believe it's to a point where it's almost complete. So I've got I've actually got I'm trying to make the comments on this very thorough because I want it to be so somebody else can come along and use this interface and implement, like write a concrete implementation and know exactly what it needs to do, right? So to facilitate that, I'm trying to be as thorough as possible here. So I've got all the function and exception definitions here, and then I've got all exception classes, right? And then on the functions here, I've also got comments describing each function and what it does, so that again, somebody implementing a concrete implementation of this will know what to do, will know how to implement it. So what I've done here is I've separated the idea of storing the blockchain from the idea of using it, and one great thing we get out of that is to that discussion we had about storing things multiple times, right, or storing copies of things for quick access, what have you. We don't actually have to have just one solution to that. We don't. The blockchain logic will no longer care how it's stored, right? So the backend instance of blockchain DB can do whatever it wants. It can store multiple copies of things. If it needs it to be lightning fast, it can store it all in RAM. If it needs to be even faster, it can store it all. It can cache some of it at some times. If it has plenty of RAM, it can cache the last 1,000 blocks if it wants. Things like that. That fundamentally the blockchain logic should never ever care about, but that the blockchain database should, the blockchain DB rather class, the storage can be swapped out as desired, right? And I see this being useful for, say, if you're a pool, you might want to have the entire blockchain in memory still, or the last 10,000 blocks, or whatever. Or if you're an exchange, actually, a pool might not necessarily need that, but if you're an exchange, you might want to have, say, the last 10,000 or the last 20,000 blocks in RAM at all times. That way you don't have to go and fetch things, even if the fetch is relatively fast.
Yeah, and
so
I think,
this is go ahead.
Tangential to that is the idea that we shouldn't be bound to a single database solution. It's great we will choose the one that is most suited to somebody running a full node or to, sort of atypical end user. But ultimately, if you are, like Tom said, if you're an exchange or if you require very heavy automation, you can offload the blockchain. Somebody can write a driver to offload the blockchain into Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres, Firebird, pretty much whatever you need. And even in realms of our testing, we're going to test a number of embedded databases in order to choose the one that is most suited to our workload. So a lot of the stuff's going to come out of that. There are going to be embedded database drivers that will support a number of systems just by virtue of us having to write them in order to test. And I think going forward, we're going to have a system where, or that is really back-end agnostic or database agnostic, and there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to come out of that because of it.
Yeah, and perhaps in the future going forward, depending on what the best way to facilitate this, we might decide to have some sort of either a method on the blockchain DB interface itself or a separate helper thing that can transition from one instance of blockchain DB to another, simply because all you have to do to make that transition is take one of your databases and get every block from that database and then add it to the other. That's it. Right? Add it to the other concrete implementation. And separating out the logic from the storage this way, I think, is good. I just think it's good practice and will benefit us a lot in the long term, even though it's taken a lot of time to need. What all do I really access from the storage? How do I not break it entirely? things of that nature. So progress so far, like I said, this interface is pretty well done. I'm probably about 50 to 70% done refactoring the blockchain logic to use this. But there's also other refactoring to do in the blockchain logic, like, for example, redundant code, old code, dead code, and unclear code that needs commented and documented and possibly rewritten to be more clear. So on the whole, for the blockchain logic refactoring, I'm probably at somewhere around 50%. And again, I'll be, we'll make sure to keep everybody up to date with my progress going forward. And I have a tracking branch remote as well. Now, a side note on that, just while I'm already talking, while I'm already doing a sort of a presentation-y thing, for my fork in general, my policy is going to be, if it doesn't build yet, then assume that a branch will possibly, the history on it will be rewritten. And the reason I do that even though it's traditionally like the conventional wisdom is that it's bad. It's bad to rewrite the history on a public-facing branch. And in general, I completely agree with that. But the reason I'm okay with that, if it's not building yet, if it's still a complete work in progress, is it allows me to restructure commits such that somebody coming through and looking at the history later, looking at the commits, can, like, first of all, each commit will be one clear purpose. This is what that commit was for. I can say later that commit message was terrible. Let me fix that. I can commit, one file or one class, what have you, per commit, and things like that. And I can go back and change those. Like I can make more changes to those files later and group them by commit a little better. So that's just a tangent on those seeking to track progress on my fork. Branches might be subject to rebase if they're not building yet, which this one definitely is not. So I think that roughly covers the blockchain DB stuff. Yeah, like I was saying, it's not even that it's incredibly difficult. It's more of a factor of the spaghetti code that exists there right now is the way the code is currently written makes it incredibly tedious to migrate it to a separation, to separate the concepts of storage and logic. So
But I
take
think
it away, Rick.
we're on our way, Rick. And I think that we are definitely we're a lot better off in terms of our fundamental understanding of where we want to take things and of how things fit together, and of how we can really build on Monero as a platform. And I know that the word platform is thrown around a lot, especially with younger cryptocurrency or young cryptocurrencies. They all want to build a platform, and to them, a platform is a user interface that has a trading engine in it or a chat system in it, and that's not a platform. A platform's a lot more fundamental than that, and that's really what we're building. A platform is something extensible because there's only so much cool stuff that we can come up with. But if we provide the platform, other people will come up with cool stuff, and instead of them having to rewrite Monero using Go or Java or whatever, the advantage is that they can really just sort of go straight into it and utilize the stuff that we've created, and that's really what we're aiming for. So I think that's about it. Tom and Zach, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be sure to do these fireside chats again.
Did we want to take the time to do any sort of Q&A, or?
I think the lag on Hangouts makes it difficult to do Q&A unless people use the Q&A system. And pretty much, we've only had 2 questions. Davy Pullman asked...
Oh, have we? I don't have it up. Neat.
Davy asked 2 questions. Well, the one wasn't really a question. The one thing was... And wait, hold on, I've got to select it so we answer it. He says, "This is looking very good indeed. Very exciting. I am surprised with the behind-the-scenes progress made already." And I'd just like to sort of elaborate that we don't, we don't work behind the scenes or in ninja mode unnecessarily. There are always things that we're interested in, and things that we want to do, and ideas and thoughts and concepts. And so sometimes a working group will be formed to pursue something and to take a look at it. And sometimes the working group is very small. It may only consist of 1 person or 2 people or 3 people. But, the working group's formed with a particular idea and role in mind and vision. And ultimately, things are going to come together, or things do come out of that working group that then become public, like this, like the GUI. And we keep people as updated and as we possibly can. And we do aim for transparency. Not that we necessarily want to show people or not that we don't want to show people, but not that people are necessarily interested in the very boring discussions that happen on IRC. But if anyone does want to sit and see all the boring discussions, Monero-dev on Freenode is where we spend our days, and we talk about all sorts of stuff.
And if I could make a side note there is a certain argument to be made, and this is a difficult balance with an open source project, a very difficult balance, but there's a certain argument to be made for having internal discussions of new features or changes that we want to make before we announce them, and having that discussion not on certain forums, just because if we decide no, we don't really think that's a good feature going forward, or that's going to take forever, and we could run into a problem where we'll get constant spam, or not a spam, but constant questions of when does this feature come? When do we get this feature? And so there's a certain argument to be made for not announcing things if we're still deciding if we're even going to do them, let alone if they're still in progress.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to how do we keep the signal to noise ratio vastly different to Bitcoin Talk. Bitcoin Talk or Reddit, really. We need a signal to noise ratio where there is very low noise and very high signal, because that's the only way things get done. So I know that sometimes there isn't stuff that is broadcast out to everyone every 5 seconds, and obviously we want to keep people in the loop and so on, but we don't expect everyone to sit on RC. We don't expect everyone to sit in the Monero dev channel and engage with us, and sometimes even like when stuff is really early on and it's just like at the I had an inkling stage, sometimes that stuff gets discussed in PMs, in private chats on RC. It's like, before it even like gets thrown out to the room, there's sort of like this, hey, what if we did this discussion, Anyway.
Sort of this, hey, am I overthinking this, or am I being completely stupid, or is this actually a question I want to ask other people?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's about it. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks, Tom. Thanks, Zach, for joining us and for speaking to us today.
Thank you.
Indeed.
And we'll be sure to do this again soon. That's been the Monero Fireside Chat, which, I had to do with the glass of wine. Cheers, guys.